everyone. This week is going to be a different type of training. It started with a conversation with my granddaughters. So consider this. Do we talk so much about ancestors that our closest family members have no idea who we are? Do they just know us as old grandma and grandpa who grew up in the Stone Age? Well, here's a little peek into my life before they knew me as Grammy Rayanne. If nothing else, it will give them some laughs. What I'm hoping will come from this training is for all of us to think of some ways to connect with our families, particularly our grandkids and great-grandkids. We are going to start with a birth story, mine. I was born in 1959. One night in early February, my mom and dad were visiting friends. My mom fell over a chair and broke her tailbone. That started labor, and consequently, I showed up a month early. I was also 8 pounds 14 ounces, but still needed an incubator. The ha-ha about all of this is that whenever my birth story comes up, someone, usually my jokester son, always mentions that the doctor had to squish me into the incubator and slam the door really fast so that I wouldn't ooze out. I was a little on the large, squishy side. It was an embarrassing story growing up, but telling it to the grandkids now makes it less embarrassing, and they have learned that they can laugh at the story because Grammy is laughing right along with them. So, do you know your birth story? Do you know your grandkids and great-grands' birth stories? Maybe they don't even know them. Maybe it's time to share those stories, and you might be the person to do that. With parents' permission, of course. This is me at age 2. It's funny, but I couldn't find a single oozy, squishy picture of me. Do these things look familiar? My grandkids love their technology, but this stuff is foreign to them. Heck, it kind of looks foreign to me now too. However, it has sparked some interesting conversations about how I feel about the technology of today compared to what I had. Do I miss the good old days? Yeah, sometimes I really do. My grandkids don't quite know the joy of sitting still. They are always on the go and don't quite know what to do with themselves if they aren't being entertained. Times have definitely changed. But carve out a time to talk to your grandkids. Ask them questions about their lives. If you don't know what to ask, there are tons of questions online in different places that will help get you started. Record their answers to your questions and post them on Family Search so they don't get lost. It may seem like a trivial thing, but you will be glad you spent that time with them, and they will look back through the years and laugh at their answers or be surprised that they even answered the way that they did. Okay, I admit it, I was a space program junkie. The United States space program is something that always has been part of my grandkids' life, even though they don't even know what it is. But I grew up watching every single Apollo mission. I can tell you exactly what I was doing when this happened on July 20th, 1969. And I'm sure that a lot of you could also say that. I was 10 years old, sitting glued to my family's one fuzzy TV in the basement of our home in Reno, Nevada. I was mesmerized. And I also was paying lots and lots of attention when Neil Armstrong came through that fuzzy computer transmission. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. I've always loved school, particularly history. I have some grandkids that like history. I've pulled some pictures of historical times that I remember from my life. As my older grandkids have talked about these historical times in their school, I've added my perspective. It adds just a touch if they know how old I was when these things happened and how I felt about them. Of course, not every grandchild is thrilled for you to share. This has worked well with my 3 older ones. We'll see about the younger ones as they grow up. I picked these 6 events because I figure everybody can relate to them in some way. I picked 1983 because that's generally accepted as when the internet kind of started, although there was a lot of back end working before that. 1983 was the year that my oldest daughter was born. I picked 1986, and I picked the Challenger explosion, which was in January of 1986, I picked this exact event because this was the day I went to the doctor and had it confirmed that I was pregnant with my second child. I actually spent that first weekend while those astronauts' funerals were happening in the hospital, the one of many trips to the hospital with that pregnancy. And so that is very much printed in my brain. And then 1989 was the year the Berlin Wall fell, and that was the year my daughter was born. As for the three icons at the bottom, we all know what Amazon is. Probably most of us think, how did we ever live without Amazon? I'm not a shopper, but it has made things convenient. Google, I have to tell you, I'm probably one of those that at this point couldn't live without Google. My kids think I'm smart. I just Google everything. And iPhone, the first generation iPhones came out in 2007. And I had a lot of people that I know rushed and stood in long lines to wait for that very first iPhone. It took me lots of years before I felt like I wanted to join the crowd and cough up the money for that iPhone. But I finally did, I will admit. If you look at this picture and you just put that girl playing tetherball in a dress, that would be me. I was the reigning tetherball champion in elementary school. My son says that I really shouldn't say that very loud. I told him that at my school it was a big deal. At his elementary school, tetherball was for schmucks. Thanks, son. However, a few years ago, I did beat my son-in-law in a tetherball game. I may never be able to do that again, so I'm grateful that he has never asked for a rematch. Another talking point with your grandchildren is, what did they do at school during recess? I had to wear dresses until the end of 8th grade, but we always wore shorts underneath. This picture is a representation of the styles of clothes that I wore in junior high and high school. And if you've noticed around campus, a lot of these styles are making a comeback. Models look pretty groovy, don't you think? The girls had to take home economics class in 7th grade. Luckily, my mom taught me how to sew when I was 6, so I didn't have to make the ugly aprons that were required of the girls in the class. I got to make the dress of my choice. It had tons of rickrack on it, which was so very cool in those days. My dress was similar to the one shown here on the right, only it wasn't a long dress, and it had about double the rickrack on it. I loved it, and it was much, much better than the aprons that all my classmates had to make. And I have to tell you, I wore that dress until it was practically threadbare. As for the cooking class, well, I learned to cook, but sewing was a lot more fun. By the way, there were no boys allowed in the home ec classes at all. Girls weren't allowed in any of the shop classes either. So let's talk PE. This was my PE uniform in high school. PE clothes before this time looked a whole lot different. I remember seeing my grandma's PE uniform, a picture of her in it, and it had kind of this blousey looking blouse and bloomers. So why don't you take the time to tell your grandkids about your PE classes? What did you get to do in PE class, and what did you wear? I'll bet you when you ask your grandkids, they're going to tell you what they wear now and what they do, and it is going to be a whole lot different than what you did. If you want to get a really great laugh out of your grandkids, let them see your school pictures. They will hoot for weeks. I found that the more you laugh with them, the more you connect with them. In my son's words, the 60s and 70s were sad, forgotten years. My daughter just says that my pictures are interesting, so you can interpret that any way you want. So I guess by looking at pictures, you can tell which year was the year that we forgot the day, which was picture day. So forget the embarrassment and just have fun. So what were you doing at the moment you heard about this tragedy? How did 9/11 affect you? This was a sobering time for our country. So reflect on your feelings, even after all these years. Did you journal about it? Talk to your grandkids or kids about it? Maybe take some time to write a short note about your memories of 9/11 and upload it to Family Search. Years from now, your family will know how you felt about this momentous event that happened to our country. My grandkids weren't even born at this time, and my kids were in grade school. However, I can tell you exactly where we were when we heard about it. My kids were coming out of their individual piano lessons that had been at 7 and 7:30 that morning. It was a very quiet ride back from Springville to Pleasant Grove for school. I hope that this training has opened your eyes to the endless possibilities of telling your story to those important little and not so little people in your life. This is a training to give you some ideas, so have fun with this, and thanks for watching.